It's
Oh, it's fine.
Oh, yeah, I have a speech.
All right, it's 6:30 and
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And this time we'll have, oh, wait a minute. How are we doing on Zoom? We're not seeing anyone. I just want, before I do roll call, I want to make sure Trustee Valentine is,
He can see us, we just can't.
okay, if we can hear him.
Why would you do that? We're not even, we're not on microphones.
So they're not?
No.
Oh, the light's not on. Yeah. All right, now we're cooking, maybe?
It's gotta get the microphones working again.
Just wait a moment.
Hey, Ruben, they're not up there, so they're coming out of the owls.
Mic test.
You still have no power to the microphones, Ruben. You can, there's no power to it. There we go. Oh, no, down the road. You touch it, you'll break it. Okay.
We're gonna have to go back to the old days where it's just.
Mic test. Mic test. Mic test.
Easy tasting.
Okay, I think we're good. Except for the TVs. Okay.
Thanks, Ruben.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sat on it.
Do we know if Trustee Valentine came back on?
Well, he was trying to get in now.
Just came in, okay.
It's right now, 6:30, the clock is 3 minutes fast.
Oh, well. Oh,
You guys good?
yeah, you're right, I'm looking at my computer. Okay, well, we're right on target then, aren't we? Is everyone comfortable to do roll call?
Okay, you guys good?
Yeah.
Okay. Mayor Smith,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Schwartz,
Here.
Trustee Valentine,
Here.
Trustee Check,
Present.
Trustee Hunter.
Here.
Trustee Heck,
Here.
Trustee Stelter is excused. You have a quorum.
Thank you. First item is approval of agenda.
I have a question on the agenda.
Sure.
Is there a reason that the disbursements aren't on the agenda portion of the consent agenda? I know they're included with the packet.
Oops.
Okay,
Could you?
yeah. Okay, so I would move to approve the agenda with the addition of disbursements to the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I second.
In favor?
Aye.
All right, on that, do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I move to approve the amended agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trustee Valentine? Oh, there he is. Is that a Mountain Dew I see?
Aye, aye.
Thank you. All right, and we'll start out with trustee Schwartz appreciations and announcements.
Yeah, so we have some really sweet appreciations this week. Again, these come from the community. Thank you to Frankie for all she does to keep the free boxes tidy as possible and the items accessible for the community to use. Thanks to Wilson and Sons for being so considerate with the construction project that's next door to this person who said it. This is a really sweet one. If anyone knew Dan Chisholm, Dan Chisholm, who recently passed away. Thank you for always being so helpful at Farm and Home and for being such a kind and funny member of the community. You are missed. And then I'd like to shout out to Mick, who is currently volunteering with Project Rubicon in Georgia to help with the community cleanup after the hurricane. And for those of you who don't know, Project Rubicon is just this awesome nonprofit. It's mostly composed of ex-military members, and it's all about service and disaster. And so we have a community member who's there right now. Speaking of volunteers, we had someone give a shout out to all the volunteers in this community, whether they work for volunteer for PTOs or nonprofits. I mean, volunteers really are what makes this community so special. And then finally, let's talk about the weather. It's pretty amazing, and it's a really lovely break between whatever freezing comes next. So those are the appreciations for this week.
Thank you. That's a wide variety. That's good. And then I have two announcements which have to do with openings on boards. So the town is still accepting applications for the available seat on the tree board. The tree board meets the third Tuesday of each month and is an advisory board for the Board of Trustees and the town administrator. Applications and a letter of interest are due to the town clerk on Wednesday, February 5th. And if you have any questions about the tree board, I'm sure that Clerk Better would be happy to answer those. And we continue to have a open seat on the Zoning Board of Adjustments. The Zoning Board of Adjustments only meets when public hearings are scheduled for it. Applications and a letter of interest are also due to the town clerk on Wednesday, February 5th. And I believe I said 4:30 p.m. for both of those letters of interest. And she would answer questions about the ZBOA as well. And this is the time on our agenda where we open the floor to public comment from people in the what?
Can I have one more announcement?
Oh, sure, sorry.
So I'd like to introduce Matt Taylor. He is our new Public Works Supervisor. He's here as of 25. He's not new, he's been promoted. That was something that came out of that positive employee program. He was identified pretty quickly as somebody that needs to be promoted. So he took over that Public Works Supervisor program, and he's here for another item on the agenda later on.
Great. Thank you, ma'am.
I'd like to.
Yes.
I would just like to point out, there was a Text My Gov notice that went out today. There is a fax page on short-term rentals that's been added to the town website for everybody's information.
Thank you. So I don't rush anybody else. Sorry. I'm just reading. Okay. All right. Everybody's good. All right. So now is the time to open the floor for public comment for anybody who would like to speak on something that is not on the agenda. You're allotted 3 minutes. And I just want to make it clear that this buzzer, if the yellow light goes off, that means you have 30 more seconds. How many?
45 seconds.
45 more seconds, and then the red one lets you know it's 3 minutes. And if you will come to the podium, and then I will call on anybody on Zoom if I see a hand up, and I'll rely on Ruben to let me know. Just give us your first name and whether you live in town or out of town. And I saw a hand. Please come up.
Mayor Smith, I'm Joe. Just a quick question on that back page that Lucy mentioned. Is that open for public questions or is it just somebody else's questions?
I will have our administrator answer your question during his report.
Okay.
And would you sign the sign-in sheet, please, if it's there? Thank you.
His first name?
If you do your first and last. Because you will be in the minutes with your first initial and last name,
Yeah.
and then your address, but we don't do your address.
Okay, just name and check.
Okay, thank you. Anybody in the room would like the 3 minutes? Anybody on Zoom?
I see nobody.
Okay, thank you. We'll then move on to the consent agenda, which consists of the January 14th meeting minutes, liquor license renewal for Pizza My Heart, and the disbursements. Yes, trustee Hunter.
I'd like to just bring up one thing on the meeting minutes. So for the STR referendum, I didn't see trustee Valentine's vote on there. So I'd like to, do I need to make a motion to amend the minutes to include that?
Yes, right? Yes. Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor of that addition?
I,
Trustee Valentine?
Aye.
Aye, great, thank you. Any other comments on the consent agenda? Anything in disbursements that anybody wanted to ask about? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I second.
Okay? All in favor? Ooh,
You did have a question about disbursements though, didn't you?
yeah, but you answered it. Do you feel like, would like it to be?
Sure, because it was a good question. So there was, in disbursements, there was a question related to, a check that had been cut to the,
North Fork Curators.
North Fork Curators. And that was a reimbursement, or I'm sorry, a refund for an overpayment for a marijuana license renewal that wasn't due yet. So that's why that was on there.
Just,
Yes.
just because normally that doesn't happen, we have our licenses all together, just to give you guys an idea on that, because of the conditions that was put on their local license about them being able to pass their inspection and having everything in place. That's why their dates don't match with the state. And so it was time for their state renewal, and she just automatically came and did the other one. So we were just rectifying that.
Should also say that we now have a sales tax exemption form filed with Walmart. So you won't see that coming in anymore.
Yeah, good. Good. All right, with all of that. I
Well,
think-
let me just give context to
Keep
this. So
going.
the finance committee, like, when we look at things, like, we are diving in hard, like, even into like, how come we're paying sales tax at Walmart? And what I so appreciate is that the staff just takes care of it right away. And so that's the context to it, is we found it in disbursements, and then it's just dealt with.
It adds up over time. So
Yeah,
it makes
totally.
sense to take care of it.
Totally.
Right. And I will add that we look at the coding, you know, what finance code,
Right.
budget code, and if we go, I don't think that's right, we ask and they fix it.
This one was this was a little bit more difficult than most. Normally you just submit your sales tax exemption and it's done. Walmart has to be difficult. They made me go in person, prove that I am the town administrator and treasurer, and sign a form, and then they gave us an ID card. So it's the only time I've ever encountered that. Home Depot doesn't even make you do it. So
Okay, well, now we're good. Good. All right, I think we have a motion and a second, correct?
Yes.
Okay, with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. All right, so staff reports.
okay.
And if you wouldn't mind answering that question that came up at the beginning, just off the bat.
Sure. So the FAQ page is really for frequently asked questions. If you've got something that is specific to an application you have, I'd encourage you just to ask. You can't do it right now, but if you wanted to send an email or come in and talk with me, I'm happy to answer whatever you got.
Would not necessarily be posted on the Q&A
Hang on.
page.
Correct. If you've got a specific question that isn't considered a frequently asked question, feel free to send it to me. Give me a call or something.
Well,
You two stop, you two can talk about that after the meeting, okay? Okay, thank you.
Okay, departmental scorecard. So update to the departmental scorecard. There's one thing that's pretty new. You're gonna have to, that is going to be a piece of our process moving forward. It's a new column that says alignment with strategic plan. So that's actually a requirement for best practices transparency from the Government Finance Officers Association. So we are now tracking how do the things that each department is working on, how do they align with our strategic plan? What you might see in the coming months is that it won't just be that strategic plan pillar, but it'll also be the goals associated within that strategic plan. So that might be one way that you're going to see this, I guess, improve over time. But I think it's really important that we're tying what we're spending money on to a strategic pillar, if that makes sense.
And if I could add to that, I was just at a mayor's summit for the Colorado Municipal League this week, and that was one of the topics of discussion. We probably only had 5 different talks, but that was one of them, which was your strategic plan. You need to make sure that you have a way to implement it and to report on it. And so it was kind of like he read my mind. It was when I came back, I went, perfect. That's exactly what we need, because it's, can be a little esoteric. So this is a great way for us to track how we're doing. Thank you.
So this has been updated. Most of these, thank you. I get yelled at for not signing it during meetings, so I just want to make sure it's done. And that's our disbursements. But everything up in this document has been updated, including new things have been added as well. I did want to draw attention to within my department something that was new, and then give an update on the code rewrite. One of the things that's new is personnel policy and handbook updates. It was lumped in with a bunch of other policy updates. That's now broken out to its own individual tracking area. We have a number of personnel policies that need to be updated, and our handbook conflicts with itself, kind of like our code does in some places. And then also the creation of a neighborhood watch organization. So that's something that came out of a previous meeting that I'm putting on here, so that we can start talking about a committee in the future. And then also something that has been added is the creation of a municipal comprehensive emergency management plan. You're going to see a resolution later tonight that adopts a hazard mitigation plan. It's countywide, and they do put a number of mitigation strategies like generators that are critical facilities into that plan. But we have nothing local specific to Paonia that talks about like continuity of operations. So there's no continuity of operations plan for government or a comprehensive emergency management plan for us. And I think that's important. That would come out of that FEMA approved document that the county has that we're going to adopt tonight to distill it down into something for Paonia specifically. So that's why that's on there. And then also special event process and applications that I'd like to see if you'd be interested in putting onto a future agenda to create another ad hoc policy committee specific for this that would not only have staff and a trustee or 2 trustees, but also some of our larger special event organizers, somebody from the North Fork Creative Coalition, something like that, to help guide this policy and how to improve our processes and our ordinance in our code. So those are some of the bigger updates from my side of things. You can see finance has been updated. There's a lot of ongoing things that have been worked on, especially with like our different modules within our book of record, that Cassell piece. And then also ClearGov integration with Cassell. I have put ClearGov on notice that we are dropping them. It's a cost that we haven't used in probably 4 or 5 years. So we're just paying for something that we're not using. To my knowledge, we've never actually used their digital checkbook, which we're taking care of now with our disbursement process and our monthly budget to actuals, as well as a budget that I think is easy to read and follow. So all of those transparency pieces that ClearGov offer, we're doing. It's just not on their posted website for $22,000. So we're trying to save that.
Let's take over payroll process.
So payroll processes are going to move over into the finance department. So that's things like timekeeping, check generation, those kinds of things. are moving, and then how it books from Cassell or from ADP into Cassell. So the clerk can focus on clerkly duties. And this just makes sense. She's not losing the HR function, so don't think that Sam is no longer going to be doing HR investigations. But as far as payroll is concerned, that's really a finance function. And so it's finally, I think I've got Kaja to a point where she can take on that without being inundated. Because she has updated and recorded on processes. So she's owning those things from cradle to grave. So it's coming. And then you can see that everything, a lot of these things have been updated. One of the things that I added to Public Works was an ADA transition plan. We've talked about that. And then a request coming up on your future agenda to send an RFP to hire a consultant to complete that. And it will probably cost about $30,000. So an ADA transition plan is something that should have been in place since 1990 and 2000, and we haven't had one. What it does is it evaluates every intersection in town, tells us the existing condition of that, whether or not it complies with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and now the most recent public. There's a new standard that's come out as well for public rights of way that we also would need to consider. That went into effect in November of 2024, so it's actually a thing now. But the amount of staff time it would take, we just don't have the resources. So I'd be requesting that we put it out for RFP to hire a consultant. That'll be on the February 11th agenda. Other than that, Public Works, Town Clerk, Police Department have updated their deadline score or their departmental scorecard, and it is now updated. Thankfully, Public Works did most of their alignment with the strategic plan because Nikki was in it at the same time I was while updating some things. She was able to update it, but everywhere else, I put in those were how that aligns. Are there any more questions on the departmental scorecard? Yeah.
Okay, so obviously there's some pretty drastic changes happening at the federal level.
Mhm.
And thinking about like the trillions of dollars of funding that have been paused, how does that impact us? Like, I'm curious what grants we have right now that are federal grants that may be impacted. I know we just submitted the over $1 million grant to Safe Routes for Schools or Safe Pathways to Peonia. So yeah, I'm really, as a trustee, I'm really concerned about what's happening at the federal level and how it can come down and really have an impact on us here. And I know it's very soon to say, but it's something I think we as trustees need to be tracking.
Yeah, and so my understanding is those things that are currently under obligation, so they have a completed contract, are not subject to this pause.
Really? I thought they were.
So we've got a complete contract for WaterSmart. We're not in that negotiation phase. So yes, we've received a notice of award. Those that have received a notice of award but don't have a contract are in trouble. Our raised grant application is up in the air. Even though they did send out an amended NOFO on Friday that says, hey, we've changed some things based on some executive orders that have come out. However, that is when this paused. We don't have an active contract with them. It hasn't been signed on the federal level. And then the other issue that we have is even though we have completed a contract and submitted it to Federal Highway, they haven't signed it. So we don't have a fully executed agreement with Federal Highway yet. We're still waiting on to hear what that does. There was a federal judge that kind of paused the freeze. But we did hear from DOLA today about getting more information out to us. This is all pretty new, and they are planning to meet with the National League of Cities as well to try to get more information out. So we don't have a lot yet. The good news is like our state revolving fund loans that we're applying for, those are not affected by a federal pause.
Is that money coming from the federal
It
government?
is not. So that those SRF, what the state does is they pool together a bunch of projects around the state, and then they submit that for a bond. And that's how they fund a lot of these programs. It's not going to affect our state revolving fund, drinking water revolving fund level. It shouldn't also affect, well, it will affect our Water Smart grant that we have applied for and haven't heard from yet. So that's also still up. So it's a strange time.
You did. I just asked that, I want this to be top of our list because it has major implications for us and our budget in the projects we're taking on. And without having some of these grants, if these things don't come true, I know it's too soon to say, but I think we have to very actively be monitoring it, as I know you will be.
Yes.
In our
I think Safe Routes to School is a state program, so we may be okay there, but I don't know if they receive a federal pass-through. So that's one that we're still kind of waiting on CDOT to give us information on. On the state level, I can tell you, this is an update from,
Before you go to that,
Sure.
can I ask about the working on the lead service line inventory? So that the town's inventoried all the homes, all the properties that have lead service lines?
Not all of the homes, so like our side, we submitted, but like everything we done.
And is there a grant potential for changing those out?
Possibly, so I'm not sure what the state is gonna help with homeowner side versus our side. I know our back trailers will help us prove some of our side on some of the unknowns, but I don't know how much help is gonna be available yet as far as to the homeowner side.
but yes, our survey has been completed by Sunrise Engineering. It has been submitted to the state to CDPHE. That part has been done. The next steps on identifying which ones need to be replaced, as Corey said, there is some state funding available, but again, if that's federally funded, because of the new EPA general rule that came out, I don't know the status of any additional funding for the state.
And are these mostly those small pigtails, or can it be some of the larger pipes going into homes from the meter?
So my understanding from a DOLA meeting, the fourth quarter of last year, was that it was for all of it. So it wasn't just pigtails, but also that service line that goes to the house. But again, if that's got partial federal funding, we're kind of in a holding pattern.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sorry, trustee Hunter?
Town Administrator Wynn, would you please provide an update on the code rewrite?
Yes, I can. So we did receive a reply from Leslie Klusmeyer with Sustainable Futures that is doing our code rewrite. She can't move forward until we have a comprehensive plan that's ready to go. So because that's where she's at right now, she's at chapter 16, 17, 18, and cannot do anything further until we know where we're going with our comprehensive plan. So that's what I got from her in an update. Let's see. And then I think you also had a question on an aerator.
Yeah, I would just like an update on the wastewater treatment lagoon aerator.
So we do have another aerator down still. We're quite a ways out, we're looking at other options that we can use there. Just have to make sure that it's the same that our permit allows. So trying to get 3 quotes for options and betting that they're compatible with our permit.
How are we functioning in the meantime?
We are doing okay. It's not, the ponds are somewhat freezing now without that one operating, so. But all the testing has came back within range, so
The good news is we have capacity for storage. So if there's a longer treatment time necessary, we haven't met that capacity yet. So
Right.
that's the good news. The bad news is these aerators, they are not cheap and very hard to find.
Could you just give context for people who don't know?
We're not sure what caused it still, but one of our aerators that we were doing. Something happened and it basically ripped one of the pontoons in half, so we had. Yeah, it made a big mess. I don't know if it was a bearing in the motor that caused it to. Just vibrate something loose and caused it to. Tear the pontoon apart or not.
Yes, so these aerators sit on what Corey call a pontoon, but the motor stays out of the water and it blows down. And whatever happened, there may have been some vibration that happened and sheared it right into. Do you have a picture of it?
I do have pictures. Jordan said he could jump on too.
That's fine. I just wanted to give a context for the audience.
Yeah, I do have pictures I can share.
So you couldn't fix it?
No,
It has to
it's
be completely replaced, yeah.
so either. All we can do in-house now, since we have an electrician, we can test the motor to make sure that the motor didn't go bad, but. It did a lot of damage. Either way, we need a new aerator portion of it and a pontoon at the very. If it's all three portions of it, it's about 15,000-16,000.
Any other follow-up? Thank
I don't
you.
know if there's a way to share the pictures, but if you guys want.
Yeah, we have a picture if you want to look at it.
I'll take a look, just.
Look at anything. Oh my gosh. Space debris.
Yeah. So.
Oops.
So. That's kind of, I do have more pictures going on.
But that
I do
is-
have the email.
We're just looking at mangled metal right now.
All right, I think, any other questions on that before he goes on to legislation? That's where you're headed next,
Yes.
right?
So the Colorado Municipal League and the Public Policy Committee they are monitoring a number of bills going through both the House and Senate. And, you know, we are represented on that board. Actually, the Western Slope is pretty well represented on that board, so, which is a marked change from even 2 years ago. I believe last year was the first time that Paonia had been represented in this committee in decades. So it's a good thing that we're able to do this. But you can see, this is just a quick rundown of kind of those bills that are going on. And then you also have, to follow through with this, there's also in my report from last month, they also included what CML had as their, you know, some of the things that, as to what these bills actually do. Some of the bigger ones that we're watching are like the Colorado Voting Rights Act, which prohibits actions that create or intend to create voter disparities and bans election methods. The CML majority of people said, hey, we're going to support this with appropriate amendments, you know, that didn't erode like local home rule. So that's, and you got to look at this from a lens of local governments governing locally and stopping state preemptions. One of the bigger overreaches that we saw was House Bill 25-1071 of, this is one that I seconded as the town of Paonia, because it changes the distribution of state monies and takes away from our local law enforcement and sends all of that to counties. That one passed to oppose it unanimously at 68-0. So it was pretty important to follow. A couple others that that are of particular interest to us are allowing for a change in House Bill 25-1077, which changes the requirements for backflow prevention devices to allow for like public works employees to not be licensed plumbers, but to be able to do those inspections. And so that one was pretty close to unanimously support to pass it. It just makes sense. These are the guys that have to make sure it's in place. Backflow preventers are in place to protect our water supply or our drinking water from contamination. And as the code is written, or the statute is written right now, it has to be a DORA licensed plumbing professional. A couple of the other ones that were considered was an open meetings, open records change. It passed for amendment. The amendment was that the media also has to follow the same rules as everyone else, that there isn't this diminished window for replying, but opening it up to 5 business days instead of 3. So that was one of them that were, hey, to support that amendment. One of the largest overreaches that we saw during this session is residential solar panel automated permitting requirement that says any municipality 5,000 people or over to adopt an ordinance that implements an automated residential solar permitting platform that will look at an application. So this is an automated system, computer generated, that reviews an application, sends it towards code, and then also allows for inspections to be done virtually through pictures and video. This one was vehemently opposed, and that passed to oppose it unanimously as well. So this bill is, what it intended to do was to say that you've got to do this, and it's the state saying you've got to do it, which is what the CML attorneys were calling a complete preemption of local authority, attempts to erode the ability of local governments to govern locally, and is an unfunded mandate that has no basis in an actual need within the state. So that's, I think it was actually presented by an outfit out of one of the Carolinas that is pushing this legislation through other states as well. So that is the update, and those are available in your agenda packet if you have any questions on them.
Do you think that the CML, your policy committee, and when they go to lobby at the legislature, have they shown that these opposition or agree carry weight?
They do. So
legislators.
When there's a majority of municipalities in the state that oppose it, these lobbying attorneys for CML go, and these bills either get significantly amended in committee or they die in committee and never go to the floor for vote. So if there's an opposition to it, it tends to resound with our state representatives.
Any questions on those? Seeing none, we can move on to actions and presentations. Item number 1 is the consideration of resolution 06-2025, adopting the hazardous mitigation plan. And Stefan is going to make the presentation because Chris Stewart, our Delta County, what's his title?
He is our emergency management director
For the whole county.
For the county. He actually couldn't be, this was on the previous meeting and it got rescheduled to this meeting. Chris apologizes, but he's also on the board of directors for, I think, Delta Health. And he had a board meeting tonight. So I said, well, I can present for you. And if I have any questions, Matt can help as well. The chief can help as well. The Delta County Emergency Management Office has worked with the consultant municipalities for about 2 years now to update the HMP, that hazard mitigation plan, which was last adopted and approved in January 2019. It's called the 2018 HMP, even though it was adopted in January of 2019. FEMA requires that it's updated every 5 years. We just completed a rather extensive public outreach campaign, or the county did a public outreach campaign working with municipalities to include certain items, and we'll go through that list. Chris has prepared a PowerPoint for us that we'll just go through that list to see what's been included. A couple of the major things that I lobbied for to be put into this plan were backup generators at our critical facilities. That's town hall, water plant, wastewater plant. That is now included, as well as radios for not just P2 compliant 800 megahertz radios, not just for the police department, but also for public works. So when they're up on the mountain where there may have bad, not great cell phone reception, they can still communicate. If we were to have a critical emergency where, say, a cell tower falls or something happens with the cell tower, at least our public works department can still communicate. So yeah, that means they'll have 2 phones and a radio, but hey, it's just redundancies, backups. I'll go through his presentation as well as I can. There is a resolution that he provided. We've changed some things so that it's formatted to fit Paonia, and also changed a couple of things in here so that it fits more with how we do resolutions in town. But nothing substantive. It was just formatting. Let's see. So these were the participating jurisdictions. It wasn't just towns and cities in the county, but it was also our fire protection districts who had included a lot of information as it related to how do we do like wildfire suppression and mitigation tactics. And so those also were put into this hazard mitigation plan. He goes into how it was funded. I don't believe we, as the town of Paonia, paid anything into this. It was the Delta County, and then also a grant program that helped cover those costs. Let's see. They started planning in December of 2022, so it's a lot longer than a couple of years. And then use public surveys to gather feedback from community on natural hazards. So that's the things like wildfire hazards, steep slope hazards, things like that. So FEMA floodplain or flood maps were also incorporated in this document, considered while they were making this mitigation plan. And the entire intent of the mitigation plan is to identify known areas of risk so that local jurisdictions can plan accordingly, and how to react to that threat, how to mitigate any sort of threat to begin with, but if one happens, how do we as a local jurisdiction and a cohesive county unit respond to that? It contains a history of hazards across the county and jurisdiction, specific mitigation actions that policymakers and agency officials would like to implement over the next 5+ years. And it is required by FEMA for any pre-disaster mitigation grant programs, the BRIC funding, the state HMGP funding, those kinds of things. A project has to be included in this HMP. That's why I was really lobbying hard for radios and generators, because those things have come out of multiple discussions here. And it actually wasn't that hard to put it in. We just said we wanted it, they put it in. We are one of those several jurisdictions that were able to apply for the BRIC grants. So we completed that FEMA BRIC grant application, got it all in, got our HMGP grant in, and were denied because Delta was, number one, it wasn't included in the HMP, but also we were behind in getting an HMP to FEMA for approval. He talks about why you have it. So it's both pre and post disaster. It also tells us how we're going to respond to those types of things. This is also what I was alluding to in my departmental scorecard, my update, where we have a municipal comprehensive emergency management plan. That's going to tell us how our local jurisdiction is going to react or respond to any sort of natural disaster or emergency. He also says HMP can inform other plans such as land use zoning, capital improvements, fire mitigation, flood control regulations more. That's specific to wildfire mitigation, wildfire hazards, and flood hazards.
We can read these too. So
Yeah.
we go into the good stuff.
I'm just, so this is the 4 goals. These are the 4 goals that they identified to move forward with this HMP. And then this is the matrix they use to profile hazards. Most important part is this, not this one, not that one, not that one. Let's see, this one. So FEMA, this isn't the most important one, but FEMA sent back, we had originally submitted, or the county had originally submitted this. FEMA sent it back and said, you've got some more things that you need to do with community outreach and coordinating with municipalities within the county. And then, so these are some of the action goals that came out of that. Flood mitigation, Apple Valley Park, update our source water protection plan. That's critical, that I think we're working on anyway. And then, let's see. This is what I consider the most important part of the plan. These are the specific projects that have been identified in the hazard mitigation plan for Paonia. So you'll see that some of the things are like develop zoning restrictions for new development, floodplain, and dam inundation zones along the western border of Paonia. Those are zoning code changes that we have a process for. Domestic water treatment plant upgrades to improve water quality. So they're talking about water treatment media for pre-filtration to remove post-wildfire water quality hazards. Some of that could be like PFAS that we've been talking about. Well, yes, it's federally banned in certain situations. Hasn't been completely phased out with some wildfire fighting techniques. So that's something to consider. Things like that would be like reverse osmosis systems, those kinds of filtration out of our water treatment plant. Conduct a fire hazard mitigation assessment within city limits or town limits. That's something that we could do and then include into a municipal comprehensive emergency management plan. Do the GIS map wildfire threat for the town of Paonia. Source water protection plan needs to be updated. So that's something that is also included here. So we can go for funding for it. All of these things are so that to have inclusion in this document, allow us to go for different types of funding. And that's what is also identified as the sources of funding. Map wastewater flood hazards. That comes from FEMA. That's actually already done. And then we just get that GIS data from the county and put it into our maps. Mitigate geohazards, access and functional needs community survey. So this is something that I had talked about in one of our kind of larger county gatherings, is how do we identify the vulnerable people in our community? There's a lot of pushback from the fire department that I got from this, and then we continue to have discussion, and they realized we can actually do this. So what this means is, like, let's say there is a wildfire coming. Have we identified those people with special needs, elderly, disabled, people that need extra time to get out or may need assistance getting out? The answer throughout the entire county was no. We haven't done that anywhere. And so that's something that I said, well, if the city of Jacksonville, Florida, which is the largest city by land size in the US, can do this and do it in a manner that gets critical information, not only to emergency management, but down to the local level on who needs extra help or assistance to get out, we can do this here. And so it's in here. It's included. It could be pretty high cost, but there's funds identified for it. And this is going to be, it'll be a county-wide effort. Multi-hazard shelters. So develop policies and procedures to use town of Paonia facilities, like churches, school, things like that. Where could we stage a hazard response team?
Or have people come to?
So that would be like emergency sheltering supplies. That kind of ties into the next one as well. And what they're talking about generators here are smaller generators, not large generators that are critical facilities. These are portable generators. This one is the one that we wanted in, backup power critical infrastructure. So that's our water treatment, wastewater plant, town hall. We don't have any out here. I think the only generator in this area is at the cell tower and the nursing home, or the assisted living facility. Kind of scary. Water supply for fire suppression. So these are things like what they call install raw water bypass. So at diversion boxes that feed into our water plant, instead of using treated water, there could be a need to put in what they call a dry hydrant. So that could go into ponds. It could go into some sort of collection place where you draw water out into a pump or a tanker truck, take it to wherever that fire is, put it into a pool, and then pumpers take it from there. So that's something that could be installed. Dry hydrants aren't cheap, partly because let's say they go into a reservoir or a pond. You got to also stop from getting the bottom of that pond into it when you're pulling out with a pump truck or a tanker. That can damage that almost $500,000 vehicle. So, but it's included in this HMP. Provide water for wildfire suppression. I think with our wildfire, we had a wildfire last year, and there were fire hydrants out there in the middle of kind of fields in the middle of nowhere that were coming from the town of Paonia, and they were critical to helping stop that fire. Mitigate erosion on access roads to town springs. You heard from our hydrogeologist that it's really hard to access that's our spring complexes. And, this is something that is included in here, so we can go for grant funding to help mitigate those issues. And then mitigate loss of utility services. I think these are all, I forgot there's a lot more. So you can see a lot of, there's not redundancy, but there are some critical things that need to be put in here, like reduce West Nile outbreaks. So we currently contract with the mosquito control board that goes out to our wastewater plant, some other facilities to spray for mosquitoes. Stormwater infrastructure. So this was also a big one. We don't really have a stormwater infrastructure. We do have some areas like around Third that collect some stormwater, but it also conveys ditch water. And so, that's a kind of an issue as well, especially during high rain events where ditches might divert water into our stormwater system and, cause our stormwater system to be inundated. That does happen. Both Stewart Ditch and Paonia Ditch do things like that. So this is to help us with our creating more of a stormwater plan and doing some construction. And that is it. Oh, Jesus, God, no, it's
Healthy trees.
Healthy trees. So this is our Healthy Tree Initiative. This is encouraging tree pruning within town limits, but also keeping our tree canopy healthy to help with that, reducing the heat in town. I think we've heard of that in our planning commission meetings. This is something that we'll also tie into our comprehensive plan. And then continuity of communication. This is the radios. And that is it.
Okay. Trustee questions? Trustee Short?
So all of these just seem the fires in California, flooding and all of that seems so important. And when I think about our budget for this year, I'm like, I don't know if we have any of these built into it. How do we start to prioritize what we go after, given that they all seem, obviously they are ranked short-term, low, timeline priority, but where should we start with this? Because what I don't want this to be is just a plan that's like sits on a shelf, like we've got to have action with it.
So if approved tonight, we'll incorporate this into a capital improvement plan. All of these can be put into, they meet our strategic goals as well. So I think the most critical that we work on is communication and backup generators. I think that's something we can definitely tackle this year. If there is any sort of match that would be needed from the town, we would have to do a budget amendment. But we're gonna try to go for 100% grant funding for these things, so.
Other trustee questions? Trustee Valentine, anything?
You said no.
Oh, okay, you're really tiny. Okay, good. Anybody in the audience who would like to speak for 3 minutes on this, please come on up to the podium if you would like to. No, Ms. Watson? And then I'll ask for people on Zoom.
Suzanne Watson. I just want to say, with the trees, it's not only a heat island effect, but we get these really strong wind events and microbursts in this town. And when you have a canopy that's overgrown with dead wood in it, you're going to get destruction. You're going to get limbs falling on cars, on streets. And so it's really important to keep that canopy healthy, not only for, just being able to keep our trees and keep the temperatures down in the microclimate, but also to keep them healthy so we don't have there's less of a chance for catastrophic breakage and damage. Thanks.
Anyone else in the room? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone online that would like to speak? No hands?
See no hands.
No hands, okay, thank you.
Oh, can I?
Yes.
I just
Sure.
want to point it out, I know I'm wasting my breath on this one, but the state, being a refugee from the Weed Commission, the state has made the Siberian elm a noxious weed. And it left it to the municipalities to enforce it. Yeah, I just thought I'd point that out. Not that it's going anywhere.
There are a lot out there, aren't there?
There are, if you gave I think you could get rid of them cheap along the power lines. You're talking about the mitigation and stuff. You green light the DMEA to cut them down, they'd be gone before we changed our mind. Just a point. That's all I'm gonna say on that.
No, you're. Any further discussion? Questions for Administrator Nguyen? Okay, somebody ready to make a motion on the resolution?
I move to approve resolution 06-2025, adopting the hazard mitigation plan.
Second. Okay, any further discussion? With the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, looks like that motion passes. Thank you. And moving on. Oh, sorry. Yes.
If I may,
Chief Lamage?
You guys take it out. I'd just like to give a shout out to Crystal. He put in tremendous effort into this document. It was meetings, it was tabletop exercises, it was travel. The amount of time he has in this is just incredible.
So even though there was a consultant that was hired, they didn't finish. And Chris had to take it from probably 3/4 finished all the way through the finish line and then back for municipal, for additional municipal engagement. So he did a fantastic job.
And that's communicating with every agency, seen in here, multiple departments, multiple towns. So tip of the hat to him.
You're lucky. Thank you. Item number 2, consideration of resolution 2025-05, submitting a ballot question on publishing by title only, which it's on page 64 of the packet. And Clerk Vetter, would you like to describe this, or Administrator Nguyen?
I can.
Okay.
I saw him pointing at me. So since we're having a special election, we can add this to the ballot. We couldn't have a special election for it alone. But as our finance committee can back us up, recently we've had some major costs for publishing ordinances in the paper, like thousands of dollars. So we'd like to put in front of the voters, because it has to go through them to be able to publish by title only. So that would be the name of it and all the black part up at the top. And then we would also be required in that same thing to then provide full text copies of it on our at town hall, on our website, and anywhere else that the board would choose to do it, so that we can make sure that everybody has access to it, so they can read through it and still, know what's going on. So if there's a referendum process that somebody wants to go through, or just knowing what's going on. But it would save us a lot of money, especially, please think about the fact that we are doing a code rewrite, and we're gonna have to publish too. So it would save the town a lot of money. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Clerk Better. Did I call you trustee Better earlier?
Well, that's at one point, but.
I just rolled off if I did, I apologize. Thank you. Trustee questions, comments? Yes, trustee Schwartz.
I just want to say, being on the finance committee, it shocked me how much money we spent to publish. And it's so tiny, like, you gotta use like magnifying glasses to look at it. So to me, it's like publishing it by title only and makes so much more sense. It's a lot more accessible, and it's gonna save us a lot of money.
And I would like to say that this hasn't become a problem until recently, just because we are cleaning things up. There are new things to put out there where we're having to do whole sections. Before it was just kind of a normal cost, but now it's getting to the point where it's crazy. I don't even want to know how much it would cost to publish the code rewrite by title. I'd probably be afraid to come to work that day, honestly. So
as another point, right now, we only publish in the DCI. However, a notice like this could be published in multiple places and not even be close to the cost of publishing what we're publishing now.
And I'd like to add that we only have to publish that ordinance once.
it's still expensive.
Right, but just,
$6,000.
yeah, for some of this. So, with that, any other comments from trustees or staff? All right, comments from citizens in the room? Okay, you had your hand up first. And then I'll go to Zoom.
Joe, again, I read that CRS referred to in the resolution, and it sounds like you could get away with just referring everybody back to the November 26th legal section of the DCI. Is that what you're thinking here?
Oh, sorry. Well, is that the extent of your comment?
Pardon me?
Is that the extent of what you wanted to say right now?
Yeah.
But you have more time if you want to continue.
No, that's, yeah, just.
Okay,
It
we'll,
seems pretty difficult to refer everybody back to that edition and that tiny print that you mentioned. It seems a little inadequate to me.
thank you. We'll address, yeah, hang on, we'll address that. Suzanne, did you have your hand up? Please come on up.
So I want to say, I think a statement was made at the last meeting that the short-term rental ordinance costs $9,000 to publish. But I'd like to let the public know, the requirement is for things to be published once. And that ordinance was published for the entire month, every week in December. And we spent thousands of dollars unnecessarily on that. So I'm sorry if something like that has affected your decision to do this, because I think we have to be careful about how many times you publish, because you don't have to publish multiple times. It's once after the adoption in front of the board. And then as far as the whole code rewrite, I'm pretty sure you don't publish the whole code in the paper. We didn't do it in 2015 when they did the code rewrite at that time. I don't know if the lawyer can kind of shed some light on this, but I'm pretty sure you would put that, the hundreds and hundreds of pages that you're making changes to. That doesn't make sense. I don't know the answer, but it doesn't seem, there seems to be something kind of off to think that you'd have to publish everything like that. So it would be good to hear from your town attorney on that, on what the proper protocol is.
Okay, thank you. And I want to open it up to anybody that is watching remotely if you have a question or a comment. No hands? Okay, what I think might be helpful, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, I didn't see your hand, please call it up.
Jaylene Clark, and I just had a question for Sam. So is this?
And you have to speak to me,
Oh,
and we're
I'm
not,
so
and we
sorry.
can't do a back and forth, but go ahead and ask.
Sam Brown.
Yeah, I will,
Yeah.
but will you get your question out there, and
Okay.
then we're gonna see if we can get questions answered.
So are
Thank you.
you moving now to change what our town clerk sent out as how the language would be for the ballot question? Is that?
Okay, so are you talking about, so do you have our agenda packet in front of you?
No, I have what supposedly is gonna be the wording for the ballot question on short-term rentals.
This is not what this is about. This is a whole different thing.
I am so
Okay,
sorry.
so I shouldn't be doing this,
Oh,
but,
no, that's okay,
there's no-
that's okay. I didn't mean to,
right.
I
so-
thought you were talking about changing the wording and only putting, okay, got it.
And we'll do a little clarification that I think needs to be made because of both of the comments made. But before we do that, did anyone else have anything they'd like to say before we get a few answers that I think will be helpful? Okay, and nobody's online still? Okay, so Clerk Better, I think you could address the November or the December 26th or November 26th, whatever that was.
So first let me clarify right off the gate that last meeting when the board decided to send the STR referendum petition to special election. The second resolution that they accepted was the ballot language that was taken out of the referendum petition. So that is already on its way onto a ballot. It has nothing to do with this.
Okay, sorry, I confused.
No, that's okay. This is asking to put on the ballot to put in front of the voters. And I want to clarify that too. This is us making a decision tonight about whether we're going to publish by title only. We're putting this on the ballot for the voters. Whether or not we can publish by title only, and then we would have to provide the full text of the ordinance. That's also in statute. If you're going to do it by the title, you have to provide the full text for people to look at any time. So we would put it, I know for sure on our town website, we would have paper copies available at town. We can even post it at town. I do a lot of notices there too. I mean, we'd still have to get it out to everybody, the full text. It would just save us the publishing cost of the thing. And yes, we only have to publish by one. That was something in my training that turned out was incorrect, but it's still, regardless, even publishing one time, the most recent ordinances, we were still getting thousands of dollars. So as for the code rewrite stuff, this was something that the town attorney and I talked about, because that was my first thing, is like, if we're getting ready to do this code rewrite, how are we going to keep these costs down? Because this is going to get expensive. And so this was one of those suggestions. So yeah, the only decision you guys would be making on this tonight was whether or not I can include it in the election on the ballot for the members of the community to decide.
And you kind of just answered the question because you and our town attorney have discussed this in terms of what would be required for publication.
We were discussing this actually the first time that the STR ordinance was published, just because it was so expensive compared to other ones that we had done just that one time. So I was of course curious, it's like, is there a different way to do this? So Mr. Buckner and I had a couple of conversations on it. This was the way we decided to go. And once again, it'll go to the voters, so.
Well, the follow-up, based on a question from the audience, that when we rewrite our code, we still would have to publish, even if it's chapters 1 through 18, whatever.
That's something that our town attorney is gonna be better at. It is gonna be an issue, but I don't know exactly how that process plays out, because that's a new one for me too, so.
And did you and the attorneys talk about that, or
We talked
whether there
about,
was any question whether it's required?
we just talked about it as it would be another positive for putting this on the ballot and seeing if we could publish by title. When it comes down to the specifics of that, when it comes to our code rewrite, I would have to defer to Mr. Buckner because I don't have the answer to that question.
I might ask Clay if I could, if we're gonna be doing some sort of change to all of our chapters, one of the audience members thought that if you were changing some part of all of your chapters, that may not require publication statutorily.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak to, that's kind of a, I think a separate issue. I mean, technically you're supposed to publish any, any ordinance that you're adopting. So that can become, sometimes I've seen municipalities that publish the ordinance and just include these major changes that you're talking about that would be hundreds, sometimes 1,000 pages, that would be completely ludicrous to print into a paper by exhibit, and they will publish the ordinance in the paper and then just include the exhibit that you can get to. That hasn't been challenged or approved yet necessarily by state law, et cetera. But what I would consider, or what I would just push the boat towards, is this is a major time and money saver for the town. This is what almost every town has, if they haven't done it, they're looking to do it because of the immense amount of resources that you save and money that you save and having to print, 20, 30, 40, 100 pages at a time for some ordinances. So that's really the intent behind it. But I don't want to speak to like what you do with an entire code change, but you can, the bigger the ordinance, the more this makes sense, because the easier it is to publish by title, to do the publication by title, excuse me. So, I recommend this highly as a course of action for the town.
Because it looks to me, based on our resolution, CRS 3116-105 requires all ordinance adopted be published at least once. So there's no exemption for volume. And this is the way around.
Yeah, technically
Not
there
publishing.
isn't. Like I said, there's cute ways around it that I think are challengeable and supportable, and just there's no case law or higher power that's made that decision yet. But I would just recommend doing this so you don't have to put yourself in that position.
Great. That answers my question. And did that bring up any other questions for trustees? Okay. Trustee Valentine, anything you need to add? I just don't want you to be forgotten up there in the corner.
Thank you. No.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion? Trustee Hunter?
I move to approve resolution 05-2025, submitting a ballot question on publishing ordinance by title only.
I'll second.
All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
I
Thank you. That motion passes. Let's see, item number 3, appointing a staff member and a trustee to the Planning Commission. And for anybody following along, that is on page 67. And Clerk Vetter, if you would just give a little summary of where this is coming from, then we'll continue.
At the December 10th meeting, our last meeting of the year, ordinance 2020-4 was passed, changing some meeting operations and conduct. It was basically making sure all the boards were operating the same way, putting into the municipal code some things that had only been in there by resolution before. And one of the other changes that was made was to put the Planning Commission from a 5-person committee to a 7-person committee. And then by state statute, the 2 new members would be an administrative staff mayor that would be appointed by the mayor, and a member of the Board of Trustees that was appointed by the board itself. The other board member is appointed by the mayor, and that's Trustee Hunter, and she's on there. So it's the way the state statute sets it up, so your committees operate the right way. So, and then our Planning Commission is doing a lot right now. We've got comprehensive plans and planning for the future and all of that stuff, so. Okay.
So there are 2 decision points here. One to be made by me as to the staff member, and the other to be made by the trustees to appoint another trustee. And I will just say that Rick Stelter was, in his absence, he was willing to become a Planning Commission member, just so you know, from your perspective. On that.
I think I checked with them. I checked with them today too. So.
So if you all would like to deal with that half of the decision making and make a motion to that effect, he's a willing volunteer.
You ready for a motion?
Yes.
I would like to move to appoint trustee Stelter to the Land Commission.
Second.
We need public comment.
Yeah, I didn't do public comment. I am so sorry. Suzanne, come on up. And anybody online, put your hand up if you want to speak.
Suzanne Watson. So, since we're kind of trying to keep it close to the statute here, like with our last issue here, I like the exact wording because I don't think the statute says a staff member. I think, do they not say something like an administrative official? I mean, can we read the statute here? Sam, perhaps you can do that. Or does it just say an official? Well, you're talking about, there's the trustee, but I think they said did they say administrative official? Okay, thank you. It's in the statute, because the staff member could be the janitor. I thought it might be Mary Bachman, in fact, but, so that's why I actually went and looked, and it doesn't say staff member. Thanks.
Any other comments from people in the audience? Any comments online? No, okay. All right, so we have a motion for the trustee. And I think no comments on that. You're talking about staff. So do we have a motion in a second?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Valentine?
Aye.
Good, thank you. All right, so now the staff person. So Clerk Better, you are looking at the ordinance? It's page, what page? On page 70.
Okay, so it does say administrative official. When the commission consists of 7 or more members, there shall be 4 ex officio members consisting of the mayor, one of the administrative officials selected by the mayor, a member of the governing body selected by the mayor, and a member of the governing body selected by the governing body. The balance of membership shall be appointed as provided in paragraph 8 of the subsection.
So what was the operative word?
Administrative official.
Okay. And in my mind, that's somebody who works for the town.
Holds an office.
And so Clay, can you weigh in on your legal definition for administrative? Is it officer or official? Oh, Clay? Clay, are you there?
I'm here.
Thanks. I bet
just
you're
need-
reading.
Sorry, can you give me? Can you re?
The question is, that came up from Ms. Watson was, statute says administrative official. And I'm just looking up the definition, that is either hired or appointed to work for a particular unit of government. So my question to you, Clay, was if your interpretation of administrative official is somebody who is hired or appointed to work for a particular unit of government.
Yeah, I think it's pretty broad. I think you're talking about pretty much any staff member that can conduct administrative activities on behalf of the town. I think where you get into the higher, like the more specific definitions is when you're talking about officers of the town, and those are those officers that are listed as clerk, judge, attorney, that are appointed by the BOT. And so the way I read that is that pretty much any staff member that's appointed or hired as an administrative official, including, often members of commissions and the trustees in a secondary manner, although trustees are officers as well. So there's kind of like a larger category and that smaller category. And if Stefan or somebody has something different or disagrees, I'm all ears, but that's how I read it.
Thanks. And it seems like the other requirement is that they live in the municipality. Right, that's the other caveat. For people that serve on the planning commission. So, so we have my decision. And so I had been talking with Clay about Stefan being on the planning commission and what that would mean in terms of Stefan also be the person who does the staff reports. And the thing that came out of that was that the way that the staff reports have been provided to date to the planning commission is they got them on the day of the meeting. And Clay said that really isn't necessary, that staff report should be part of the public record and it should go with the agenda when the agenda is published for that public hearing. Meaning that everybody sees it at the same time when it's published. Because I had a concern if Stefan were to be the person, that he couldn't also be the person bringing it to us after the agenda packet had been published. So that for me made it feel better to have Stefan be on the planning commission. And if he had to recuse himself because he knows something personal about the real property coming before the planning commission, because what's really important here are those public hearings when we are all making decisions about a piece of real property and it's people's private property, et cetera. So my inclination, given that we don't have a whole lot of people that live in town that work for the town, is to consider Stefan to become a member of the planning commission, which is often the case that when you have a planner, a hired planner, that person is also a member of the planning commission. But I am open to discussion.
I would agree with that decision.
Okay, and I'll open it up to the public. Anybody online? Okay. And Trustee Valentine, I want to give you equal time if you have any thoughts.
No.
Okay. So let's see, there's no motion involved, right? So at this point in time, I would like to have Stefan fill that final seat for the planning commission. Okay.
Okay.
All right, moving on to item number 4. And this is appointing a planning commission member to the zoning board of adjustments. And this is a board of trustees vote. And I don't know, Clerk Better, is there anything you feel like you need to add on that?
It's just that right now our zoning board of adjustments only has 3 members. And in our ordinances, it says that if somebody goes to the zoning board of adjustments for any kind of appealing action, there has to be an affirmative vote of 4 for that to happen. So as of right now, our zoning board of adjustment can really give due process to people who were applying for that. So I think it's really important that we get somebody on there.
Okay, thank you.
And we had no interest, we'll still have an open seat.
From the public. So Chair Watson resigned as the ZBOA member of the planning commission at our last regular meeting. So I don't think it's appropriate for the mayor to be on there. In my opinion, I just think I just feel like it's a little too much crossover. But we have Lynn Howe, who is not here. I see she's online, or Mary Bachran has just joined the planning commission. So I guess I would ask if either of them would be willing to be our planning commission member for the ZBOA. And Mary, would you come up so Lynn can hear you? And then Lynn, I'll give you a chance to voice your thoughts.
Yes, I would be happy to serve on the ZBOA.
Okay, thank you. Everybody could hear that. And Lynn, did you have any burning desire to be that person? She's muted?
She's unmuted.
Oh, you unmuted? Yep. Lynn, you don't have to chime in if you don't want to. I just see that you're listening. So I'm gonna take that as an answer. So, any discussion amongst the trustees?
Thank you for volunteering.
And any discussion from the audience in person or online? All right. And no, okay, hearing none, we have a motion?
We'll move to appoint Commissioner Backren to the ZBOA.
Second? Right, seconded by trustee Heck, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes, and now we get to hear about the bathrooms in Town Park, which is pretty exciting.
I should say, we still have one opening on the ZBA.
Yes, we still need a citizen member of the ZBOA, and if I remember right, they don't have to be a Paonia citizen.
Correct, they do not.
Okay. And then, okay, thanks. Who would like to talk about the new proposed construction in the bathrooms?
All right, so this is relating to the town park bathroom.
Can I ask you to do something?
Yeah.
Would you sit up here, please? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but it's so much easier to have you right up here where people can see you and hear you better. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is in relation to the town park bathroom. We've received some donated funds, as well as we've budgeted for some bathroom updates and remodels. So this year we've been tasked with opening that bathroom to be year round. So we need to winterize it as well. This is a proposal to use Dependable Lumber as our main vendor for this project. They are able to get us everything we need. Matt Taylor was able to get an items list and compile did a bunch of work to get all these items together, get them to Dependable. They gave us a quote on it. The only thing they weren't able to get us were the baby changing stations, which we will either purchase or make. They were able to get us a new updated quote. Sorry, it's not in the packet. We got it today. That was about $2,000 less. They were able to get us a better discount on the doors. But that was pretty much the main driver of why that quote was so high. So they were able to bring that down to a total of $13,520.86. So with the budgeted and donated funds, Public Works it comes out about $75,000 total. We're asking for $35,000 of it to complete this remodel, hopefully by Easter. That's kind of the first town event. We have the Easter event, so we're trying to get it done before.
Questions from the trustees?
And Matt Taylor's here too, if there are any questions about kind of the boots on the ground questions. He's got a lot of experience in carpentry and construction.
If I may, I have two questions. One, I believe that the Colorado Grand grant is about 17,000. Is that right, Mary? So it's been waiting for this project.
Yeah.
To put towards it, so that helps a lot. And could you just describe what you're gonna do in there? I know you have to do an ADA bathroom in both men and women.
Yeah, so Matt did a lot of research on that as well. We've spent a lot of hours trying to make it ADA compliant because the bathrooms that were there before were not. We will lose a stall in each side to make that available. However, that larger stall will also have the baby changing station in it on both sides. Both sides will be heated as well. We're updating the lighting. We were able to get an electrician that would be included in that $35,000. He'll be able to insulate the walls as well because it's just a brick building. It's very cold in there. I don't know if you've ever used it before. So the brick dividers have come out and we will build wood and like galvanized tin dividers now. So it'll have kind of a rustic feel to it.
Instead of shower curtains.
Yeah, instead of shower curtains, they're just open stalls. It'll be closed off from the ceiling, so we're not gonna get pine cones and spiders and wind blowing at you either. So that will be nice. Am I hitting anything else, Matt? that you-
We'll furrow out all the exterior walls and insulate them, drywall those, put a finished product on those too, make them look nice.
Hot water too?
Asking for 35. You're gonna be able to do.
I was gonna, we will be able to add that. If we get the 35,000. That gives us a buffer that when things like that come up, or we need to change some plans, because you never know which. To, the building has some settling issues. I think we're okay though.
Roof's okay?
Sure. That could also be done as well, if we have that much funding. There's a lot more we could do. This 35,000 would get it functioning again. Year round.
Around, I know that's good.
Correct.
Any more questions now that you have more little details? Trustee Hunter?
Well, it's probably the same one trustee Swartz has. I see her looking through the budget. Administrator Nguyen, how are we setting budget wise for this?
We still have $15,730.48 left on the GoCo grant. That has to be used for bathroom renovations, can't be used for anything else. That was the stipulation put on it. And as far as, what's that?
Am I getting the Colorado Grand and the GoCo mixed up?
Colorado Grand was the fund we got.
That's right, it was Colorado Brand. That's that car shrimp thing that comes through. They'd be really happy to see this happen too, but we still have some funding available. And we had budgeted throughout the park funds for different sorts of building things. Let me pull it up.
It seems like the capital outlay is only 15,000.
Yes. Let's see.
2,500 grant projects.
Yeah, so we have capital outlay of 15,000. However, we also have equipment of 15,000 as well. And looking at how we've typically spent, I don't see us needing a budget amendment. What'll have to happen is I would reduce some of these line items and then transfer to that equipment line item to fund it without changing that final number. If we get closer to where we look like we're going to exhaust that fund and we have to do a budget amendment, we'll let you know. But as of right now, it looks like we were budgeted for surplus in some of these expenditures that we should be able to cover this cost.
Okay, but if you're I'm gonna be a little bit nitpicky because I feel really cautious about spending money right now. Just what's going on federally. If y'all are asking for 75,000 in expenditures.
35.
Okay,
There was
but
75.
but the donated funds. Wait, I'm sorry, say that again, sorry, Nikki.
So maybe I was incorrect on that one, but the grand total between budgeted and the donated comes out to the 75.
But wouldn't we have to put the donated funds into our expenses? Like, are the expenditures, like for the donated funds, do we not have to show them as an expenditure?
Those wouldn't be an expenditure. That would be, we show that in a transfer in our revenues. As money coming out of our surplus specifically earmarked for this kind of a project. And that's already been done. And that's where you see that $15,000 for capital outlay building.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you see it being expended there.
Okay.
What I'm saying is if they're asking for another 20,000 in addition to that, we've got line items that typically don't get exhausted, such as our maintenance line item, which is also 15,000, and then our equipment line item, which is also 15,000. So we can cover that. If we're getting closer to, which even though those are different line items, I can make transfers.
Sure.
It's just if that bottom number, that 212,100 goes higher, then a budget amendment would be necessary. I don't anticipate us needing it, but if we do, we can always do a budget amendment before the end of the year.
Okay, so I guess the 35 I get, I'm totally fine with. The 75, what's that number?
What's the number that we talked about in the meeting?
But we're only asking for 35,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. I
That's what we're saying.
completely
They're just big
misunderstood.
pot, and we're just wanting this little chunk as well.
And so, but you've also got to look at it, we were also looking at it as if a contractor came in to do it. So you gotta look at this as, there's a cost savings by having our team complete this. And now we have an electrician as well. Even though we're outsourcing this electrical work, there are some things that he could do that might be able to reduce that cost. But we also have a carpenter who can build most of this entire project, so. What's that?
The electrician is a she.
I'm talking about the electrician that works for us.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that it really is, you're just asking for not to exceed 35,000. And you'll be able to move money around in the park budget to cover that. Thanks.
And that is asking for a pretty big cushion to choose from. Just in case.
And to clarify, I can also transfer within the general fund between departments as well without any sort of budget amendment needed. I don't anticipate that happening.
So with that, any other questions from trustees to add on to the discussion? Okay, how about people in here in the building or anybody online? Yes, Suzanne, come on up.
All these interesting topics. So I do support the ADA compliant bathroom and necessary renovations like that. But I would like to suggest that wood and galvanized tin might be great for residential construction with a low use type of a bathroom, but wood is not hygienic, especially in a public bathroom. I'm also wondering about the venting and moisture control issue. You really need something you could probably hose down, I'd imagine. So I don't know, maybe this was a previous discussion when you talked about making a year-round bathroom, but did you figure out what the cost of the cleaning and year-round maintenance and cleaning of the bathroom is? Especially winter is the low peak in the season. We have the teen center that has bathrooms in it. I think that usually stays locked. But would this be would you be locking it? Or how would you keep vandalism from happening? How would you keep people from camping in the bathroom? It's a remote location. I know you've even had problems with the bathroom at Town Hall where they had to lock it because of misuse of the bathroom. And that was right under your noses. So I'm just kind of wondering about the logic of keeping a bathroom all the way over there open all winter long, when you actually do have a teen center that has a bathroom in it too. But other than that, I think hygienic and professional materials would be really important. I think wood would be quaint, but I just don't see that as being an appropriate material to use in a public bathroom. Thanks.
Thank you.
I do want to respond to
Sure.
one part of that.
Yeah. If anybody else wants to speak, we'll get back to you.
Knowing that since I've been here, I haven't locked this public bathroom for vandalism. So it hasn't happened under my nose or our chief's nose. We are under video surveillance at the front anyway. So as far as materials in the bathroom, I think that those things were considered.
This was to keep costs down. It's also treated wood that will be sealed as well. We'll put a sealant on it. Above the wood will be the RFP.
The FRP.
FRP, I was gonna, yeah.
In hospital rooms and other public bathrooms.
Yeah.
That's good.
So it'll be able to be washed as well. Public Works already cleans those bathrooms. It's already in our daily maintenance schedule. It will be locked at night, either by us or PD. We've been working together with PD on how to monitor those bathrooms as well. There's more things in the works too, not that we can put cameras in a bathroom, I'm not saying that. But there'll be cameras at the parks, hopefully soon. So we definitely have thought about it because the parks or the bathrooms have been vandalized before. We are getting different kind of hand dryer. We're getting hand dryers instead of paper towels. That was a big thing too. They were removing the paper towel rolls, putting them in the toilets. They were removing the batteries, throwing those in the toilets, things of that sort. So yeah, we've definitely taken some precautions, but this was to keep costs down because when you get to commercial stalls, you're looking at thousands for a stall.
And once they get vandalized too,
Yeah, we can replace.
Or they could be built in a way you could just replace the panel.
Yeah, and the steel also will be a lot easier to clean with vandalism as well as like resistant to the chemicals that we would have to use to clean it.
And I should also mention that while the bathroom is open, police department patrols regularly. And so if it were to be a year-round or when it becomes a year-round restroom, we are fully staffed with our police department and public works now. And so our police department has routinely been patrolling all of our town-owned sites, including properties that are well outside of town, at least monthly, so. The piece of park closed at 10. But then it will be an actual door that goes from ceiling to floor, so instead of I think right now is it a gate?
It's just a gate, bar gate.
With
We don't
no
have any
doors to
doors.
the men or the women's side.
Yeah. And that'd be fully.
Trustee Schwartz.
Thank you all. I really appreciate the due diligence that you really looked at it from a holistic perspective. Yeah, I think, yeah, I feel really good about it. I feel really good about those town bathrooms.
That's a whole other story.
On that note, anybody ready to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move to approve Dependable Lumber as the supplier and a maximum spending limit not to exceed $35,000 for the restroom renovations department.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
It's under 10,000, right?
So it is 8:11, and that is the end of our agenda, and there are no mayor or trustee reports, so I am adjourning this meeting. Thank you, everyone.